20 years ago, Anthony Pignataro was a major player in Western New York and beyond. The West Seneca plastic surgeon became well known across the country for creating a snap-on hairpiece that he drilled into the skulls of bald guys while around Buffalo in a red Lamborghini. All of that changed in 1997 after Sarah Smith's death brought Pignataro's lengthy but concealed history of medical negligence to light. Born in Buffalo, New York, Anthony Pignataro grew up to study at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, intending to follow in his father's footsteps and become a doctor. Anthony enrolled at San Juan Bautista School of Medicine in San Juan, Puerto Rico, following multiple denials from medical schools. While attending school, Anthony got to know Deborah Rago, then 21 years old. The two got married in 1985. Together, they were parents to a boy and a girl. Anthony started as a surgeon in a nearby hospital in New York, but the young physician didn't win over Anthony's co-workers. Many believed he knew very little, if anything, about medicine. A few short years later, Anthony started his plastic surgery clinic in the West Seneca area of Buffalo. Anthony Pignataro created the snap-on toupee in the late 1990s for men who were experiencing hair loss. Gold snaps are inserted into titanium sockets that are surgically implanted into the skull to create the snap-on toupee. The gold snaps hold the hair item in place after it has been sewn together. Between the snap-on toupee company and his plastic surgery practice, Anthony and his family were doing well. Sarah Smith, a 26-year-old wife and mother, visited Dr. Pignataro's office in 1997 to have breast augmentation surgery. Compilations take place during the straightforward process. In the absence of the necessary medical equipment, Sarah Smith dies during the procedure. Police find out shortly after Sarah Smith's death that Dr. Anthony Pignataro does not even hold a license to perform plastic surgery. They also learned that the physician did not employ anesthesiologists or registered nurses in his practice. Dr. Pignataro was detained and accused of manslaughter in connection with Sarah Smith's demise. He entered a guilty plea to criminal negligent homicide, and the court sentenced him to pay $5,000 fine, serve 6 months in jail, and perform 250 hours of community service. Deborah discovers the doctor is having an affair with her when he is out from prison. After a short breakup, the pair gets back together a few months later. Deborah developed severe flu-like symptoms in May 1999. Following Deborah's admission to the physician, her spouse suggests that her gallbladder be removed. Deborah's red blood cells tested positive for poisoning. Subsequent examinations showed Deborah had been consuming almost fatal levels of arsenic. To find out how long Deborah had been consuming the toxin, scientists examined her hair follicles. Anyone interested in poisoning Deborah Pignataro? The initial theory put out the possibility that Deborah's poisoning was related to Sarah Smith's family, who were Dr. Pignataro's patients, perhaps as payback. The issue with that notion, though, was that the Pignataro family had migrated several states away from Sarah Smith's family. Deborah was questioned by the police about what she had eaten prior to being ill. Deborah's devoted spouse, Dr. Anthony Pignataro, gave her soup, which is the only meal she can recall having just before becoming ill. Deborah had ingested almost 29,000 milligrams of arsenic, according to a forensic examination. The former Dr. Anthony Pignataro, Deborah's husband, was suspected by the authorities of purposefully poisoning his wife with arsenic. And they think he was doing it with soup, the one food that seemed appetizing when he was unwell. Authorities detained Anthony once more and charged him with deliberately poisoning Deborah, his wife. Evidence uncovered by the case's prosecutors indicated that Anthony had begged the hospital's doctors to remove Deborah's gallbladder, since the arsenic would have killed her during the procedure. From Anthony's perspective, the medical community would see that occasional patient death was typical after surgery, similar to what transpired with Sarah Smith. His patient, Lamarty, a mother of 4, did everything she could to lose her postpartum weight, but even running non-stop did not seem to get rid of her belly. At her first meeting with the charming cosmetic surgeon Dr. Anthony Pignataro in his West Seneca, New York office, Lamarty reported feeling totally calm and comfortable with him. "I had no reservations whatsoever regarding Dr. Pignataro." Lamarty told License to Kill which airs on Oxygen on Saturdays at 6:05 He just made me feel at ease. After Ned dropped her off for her 8:30 a.m. liposuction appointment in June 1997, Lamarty had the worst pain she had ever felt in her life. Lamarty took a few medications and was then taken to the surgery center, a basement 2 flights of steps below. This was not at all like the sterile operating room she had anticipated. They just tossed me into this chair. I didn't want to do this, but I was trying to tell them something wasn't right. I was powerless over anything, she admitted to the filmmakers. Lamarty woke up hours later at 5 p.m., fully dressed, and the last thing she remembered was hearing someone moan loudly. After Ned lifted her up, her daughter had to use a mop to clean up the blood that was streaming down her legs when she arrived home. Upon examining her abdomen, Lamarty discovered that her stomach had 18 to 22 staples, yet the surgery incisions remained open. There were gaping wounds like the edges weren't together, like you could stick a man's finger in these holes, she said. The Lamartis were concerned and called Dr. Pignataro, who assured them that there was nothing to be concerned about and that the blood was just extra surgical fluid. Lamarty was instructed to get some rest, and he promised to check in with them the next morning. But after sleeping through the night, she was in considerably greater discomfort, so they had to head straight to the emergency room of the hospital. When the physicians arrived, they found that Lamarty was suffering from a serious illness and that the procedure had caused a nicked intestine. Her abdomen had rotted since Dr. Pignataro's sutures had severed all blood flow to it. After a few days of IV therapy and medicine, Lamarty was able to walk out of the hospital with a half-inch deep, 4-inch hole. They related first-hand accounts of their interactions with Dr. Pignataro. Apart from Smith, Lamarty discovered that 13 other women had also leveled accusations against him. After obtaining a search warrant for his office, the authorities took multiple pictures of the basement, stating it was not fit for surgery. The grand jury was presented with the case by the district attorney's office in Erie County. Retired Assistant District Attorney Chris Belling told License to Kill that Dr. Pignataro was charged with second-degree murder, criminally negligent homicide, second-degree assault, reckless endangerment, and fabricating business documents after he was arrested in January 1998. He agreed to a plea agreement in August of 1998, and according to the New York Times, he was sentenced to 5 years of probation and 6 months in prison for the crime of criminally negligent murder. Dr. Pignataro was prohibited from practicing medicine as a condition of the plea agreement. Following the disillusionment of multiple victims and those associated with the case with the sentence, Dr. Pignataro was released from prison in December 1998. "It's really unfair. He took a life," Lamarty informed the producers. 4 months after his release, his wife Debbie started to feel tingly and numb in her arms and legs, and she had trouble walking. But no one could figure out why she was experiencing these symptoms, and that summer she was hospitalized, almost paralyzed. Debbie underwent a toxicological screen, and the results showed that she had elevated arsenic levels. After acquiring a sample of her hair, they launched a criminal investigation into her poisoning and discovered that the exposure to arsenic had started around May 1999. Debbie Pignataro recalls that it was at that period that Anthony Pignataro prepared some soup, and that shortly after, Debbie became ill. Thus, we now think that the soup might have contained arsenic. Flynn stated, when Debbie allowed the police to investigate their house, they discovered taro, the ant killer, which was contaminated with arsenic. Additionally, they discovered proof that Dr. Pignataro had made transactions at a business that sold the taro using a credit card. Dr. Pignataro was questioned by investigators on multiple occasions, and when they asked him if he had attempted to kill his wife, he said, "Well, I can see how someone could think that," according to Flynn. Even after being discharged from the hospital, Debbie needed physical therapy 5 days a week and used a wheelchair, but there wasn't enough evidence to make him an arrest. But soon, an informant from the jailhouse contacted the authorities with incriminating information. Dr. Pignataro allegedly disclosed that he had a girlfriend and a life insurance policy for his wife while he was incarcerated. The informant stated that he indicated he could start over with the other woman if he were to collect on it. Dr. Pignataro allegedly asked the informant if he knew how to poison someone, and phone records showed that the two kept in touch even after Dr. Pignataro was freed. Flynn notified the producers that Dr. Pignataro had been taken into custody on charges of first-degree assault and attempted murder. He was sentenced to 15 years in jail after entering a guilty plea to the lesser charge of attempted assault in late 2000. Debbie kept him from visiting their two kids after divorcing him and seeking an order of protection. In December 2013, following his discharge, Dr. Pignataro made his way to Palm Beach, Florida. He legally changed his name to Anthony Hote 3 years later, and in 2019, he started promoting himself on a website for elder care providers. With Dr. Pignataro being out there somewhere in the world with nobody keeping an eye on him, I guarantee he'll hurt somebody else, Lamarty told the filmmakers. Flynn has since reported Dr. Pignataro to the West Palm Beach Police Department, referring to him as one of the most dangerous individuals that he has ever encountered in his professional life. Despite his past, he is still allowed to assist elderly people as long as he does not practice medicine as a registered physician. Debbie's limbs will never fully recover from the poisoning, and she will always have reduced sensation and movement in them. After serving his sentence, Anthony moved to South Florida and took on the alias Tony Hote. Through his eldercare.com page, he markets himself as a trustworthy senior caregiver in South Florida. The former physician is known to Florida authorities, who are keeping an eye out for any potential criminal activity in the future. Shortly after his release from prison in 2013, Pignataro began the scheme. Records acquired by 7 Eyewitness News show that he filed documents and established Tony Hote Cosmetique LLC, a West Seneca company, about a year after he was released from jail. Pignataro is the real owner and operator of the company, according to numerous public records, and court documents attest to his legitimate application to change his name to Anthony Hote. In a post on his LinkedIn profile, Pignataro even utilizes both of his previous and current identities. The ostentatious website, Tony Hote Cosmetique and Skincare, features pictures of gorgeous men, women, and kids. Not only does it sell a range of all-natural skin products, though, Pignataro refers to himself as Dr. Tony Hote on his website 10 times as a doctor, or MD. Clad in a white lab coat, he poses for pictures and introduces himself to prospective clients as a renowned scientist and physician, a cosmetic surgeon who has retired. The company says Hote repeatedly conducts laboratory research on its products and incorporates the universal medical sign into its logo. Pignataro gave up his medical license 20 years ago when the state health board accused him of 30 counts of professional misconduct, which included gross negligence, gross incompetence, fraud, and moral unfitness. This information is not included on the website. Customers must also be informed that there isn't a registered physician named Tony Hote in New York State. Naturally, skin creams can be sold in New York by anybody without a medical license. But Hote goes one step further, marketing an anti-aging treatment he refers to as his plasma protocol, which he describes as the first and only skincare system formulated from one's DNA-derived plasma. Thanks for your attention. Please leave a comment, like, and subscribe to the channel or email at crimesabroad@outlook.com for more cases.